the Olympics is the biggest, highest profile sports stage that you could possibly be on, and I think LA is going to be particularly special, because I think in terms of the creativity that we'll have, but also the fact that it's likely to have US athletes on the podium. You know, I think that's an added benefit. But no, I mean the Olympics has that magic about it, and you know, you go back to Nicole David, who said that she would have given up all of her World Championship medals for an Olympic medal, and I think that reflects how aspirational the Olympics is and how magical it is for those athletes to be part of the Olympics. And I think, you know, we have to, in all we do, is we need to remain athlete focused. And I think we have an advantage, you know, in squash. We've got some really well-educated, very articulate athletes who are able to add the athlete's perspective into the bid, because at the end of the day, this is about them and their potential. And they just added real value into our delivery, whether it was Amanda with the videos that supported the presentation, and whether, you know, it was Nouran as part of the presentation, or whether it was about Sorev, who was out with us in Mumbai. They all add real value and show that, you know, WSF, PSA and US squash, the squash family, have a real athlete focus, and you know, and it added to that. And you know, we had Sorev in Mumbai. I mean, he was a fantastic addition, because he'd just come back from the Asian Games with a gold and a silver medal. So his profile in India was already riding very high, and so it just added to it. And I think we were the only one of the shortlisted sports that had an athlete, and we had our chair of athletes commission, who was also president of PSA. So it covered both areas, and it was noticed. It was noticed that we had an athlete there. We should say that, you know, initially we probably felt, and I think many other people did feel, that perhaps LA was our least likely. And as we looked through and we looked at their strategy and we filled in the huge questionnaire, I think we felt that our stars were aligning, you know, and it was a really good partnership between WSF, PSA and US squash, where we really did capitalise on our relative strengths, and I think we did that very well. The team, in terms of William, myself from WSF, and Alex and Tommy from PSA, Kevin and Ned from US squash, we worked extremely well and really collaboratively, and we were able to pull out all the strengths and capitalise on those in terms of the submission, both the submission and the presentation. And I think that worked really well. And I think we also have to recognise the progress and the development that PSA has made with the tour since the last bid. And I think that has progressed, whether or not it's about prize money, about equality, about, you know, the scale and the number of events, and in terms of their broadcast reach. Whilst WSF has also been doing lots of work, I do think that the PSA Tour and what's happened there has also added significant added advantage to that bid. But there were lots and lots of features that came together. There were very many more aspects that came together, I think, to make it a success, and for it to match what LA 28 were looking for. I think there were two things really. One was about cost and budget, and from our previous bids, I think one of the things and the feedback that we gave back to IOC right at the start of my term of office was that we didn't want to go into another bid campaign having to raise lots of money that was spent on a futile campaign that took us nowhere, and it was, to some extent, we were then wasting money that could have been spent on the development of the sport. So that was one of the things. And then LA 20, so the IOC was very, very clear that saying, we don't want you to spend money on bids. We don't want you to be spending any money on a bid, and that very much included the communications and spending money on communications and promotion agencies. From LA 28's perspective, they really wanted the campaign to fly below the radar, for it to be below the radar, and not to go public, because then it just becomes a dog-eat-dog on who can spend more money on promotions and communications agencies. So I think that played very much in our favour when set against some of the very bigger sports that have got very big budgets. So I think it levelled the playing field and made it perhaps more transparent and very more clearly on what we had to bring to the games, rather than what benefits we could afford to buy. But there's an awful lot of work that was done for previous bids in terms of positioning us, and a lot that we learned from those bids. So I think that we should acknowledge and credit the work that's happened in the last 4 bids, although they've not been successful. They were good teamwork, and I think recognising that during the Mumbai IOC session there was a lot of recognition for the fact that squash has stuck to it. We've been the bridesmaid so many times, and yet we've really been focused, and I think that does represent how much it means. I think it is a signification of how much it means to the sport of squash and the squash community, and I think that was recognised also by LA28, and we should thank LA28 for their confidence and their trust in us. They were transparent all the way through and very clear, and their communication was great and their support was great, but also the IOC. And we've worked really well and built good relations with the IOC Sports Department. They've been very supportive. So, without their support and their help and their confidence in us and their trust in us, we wouldn't have got through that process. So thanks to them too. So yes, there is work to do. There's a lot of work to do, both in terms of the planning and delivery of the games itself, because although we put a proposal together, we don't know what LA28 eventually is going to decide in terms of venue, draw size, format. There's a lot of aspects still to confirm and to work towards. There's going to be quite a lot of work in that respect and needing more resources. But the other element of work, I think, is about the development opportunity it gives us for growth of the sport, and that's where I think the squash world needs to come together behind both the WSF and the PSA strategies, but certainly the WSF strategy in terms of how we use this and take maximum opportunity to optimise the development opportunities that we have from being in LA28. But of course, in the meantime, we've also got to be working towards a bid for Brisbane 2032, because that decision will be made before LA28 is delivered. So, we'll soon be on a follow-up parallel campaign trail to try to keep squash in for the next edition in 32. So yes, lots of work to do. There's a fantastic platform there, and really, I think it's up to the wider squash community to work really hard and be creative about how we capitalise on the opportunity of being Olympic. But just the words being Olympic and associated with squash, it is just exciting. It's something we've got to get used to, there'll be lots and lots of changes, and I think William, as a result of being on the Olympic programme, and I think William and I were sitting there at the IOC session in Mumbai thinking, all these, it's going to put us into a completely different arena, and a lot of things that we hadn't quite considered, where it repositions the sport of squash alongside all those other Olympic sports, and it'll be a very different world, but a very nice different world.